Life is not measured by the breaths that we take, but rather the moments that take our breath away. George Carlin, one of the best stand-up comedians of all time. When I was a kid, my dream was to become a stand-up comedian. I was always so impressed by the way that George Carlin, Russell Peters, and a lot of the comics that I look up to in life commanded a stage with nothing but a microphone. And as you can imagine, there's so many lessons that we can take away from our favorite stand-up comedians that apply to any presentation. And today I'm going to share you just that. Hi everyone, I hope you're doing amazing. Brendan from Master Talk here, your go-to channel to mastering your talk. And today we're covering the art of stand-up comedy and how you can leverage that into any presentation. So let's get into it. Number one, learning to be creative with thin air. In stand-up comedy, forget slides or even cue cards, which I hate by the way. You literally just have a mic. No props, nothing. You're just there and you're speaking to the audience. This means that stand-up comics need to spend an excruciating amount of time emphasizing every specific parts of their presentation. The timing of their joke, the way that they change their vocal tones, wasn't that funny? The way that they bring their audience on a journey with nothing but the words that come out of their mouths. And oftentimes the best jokes are always the jokes that are specific in the context of that audience. So stand-up comics need to be quick, they need to be witty, they need to be fast. So what does this mean for regular presentation? It means that we don't complain. Whenever I was worried about a presentation, especially in my early days, and I had to give a presentation to 200 people and I had slides, despite how challenging it was, despite how nerve-wracking it was, I never ever complained because I always imagined being a stand-up comic in the same situation. No slides, no support, no nothing, and I have to be funny. You know what? I think I'm going to settle for my regular presentation. So use stand-up comedy as a leverage and an inspiration to realize that if they can be creative out of thin air, so can I. Number two, the inability to escape audiences, otherwise known as the no escape mentality. If you're an expert on your subject, you can imagine that as you present more and more, the confidence that you have as a speaker is much higher. If it's your first presentation about canoes, your audience is going to ask you a bunch of stuff that you don't know. But if it's the 100th time or even the 1,000th time that you've presented, on leadership or canoes, you know what you're talking about. So there's always going to be a level of confidence that you will have in a presentation because your audience sees you as the expert and perceives you as the person to follow. Here's the punchline or the joke is in stand-up comedy, that rule doesn't apply. You actually can't escape from your audiences, and here's why. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be the vice president of a company. You could be a 10-year-old. We all know what funny is, and we all know what funny isn't. So even if you give a great performance as a stand-up comic, there is no guarantee that the next time you present, you'll do just as good. And that, as you can imagine, is extremely nerve-wracking and stressful for the best stand-up comics in the world. And it's also why very few stand-up comics actually make a name for themselves because of that constant pressure to always be exceptional. Even if my jokes are good today, will they be good tomorrow? I sure hope so. So because of that mounting pressure, like a pressure cooker, stand-up comics always get the worst end of the stick. So what does this mean for us? Once again, it means that we don't complain. If we see ourselves as the expert, that should give us the confidence to conquer any presentation. So the lesson I want you to take away here is if you have the easier job, if you're someone who can be an expert in their subject, then realize that your confidence will skyrocket with it, unlike stand-up comics. And finally, number 3, repetition is a must, not a maybe. If you watch any interview of your favorite stand-up comic, whether it's Kevin Hart, George Carlin, you name it, it's always the same story. For the first year, 2 years, 3, 5 years, they would present to crowds of 20 people at a comedy club, day in, day out, 3 to 4 times a week. Even if they were making 20 to 30 bucks per gig, they just kept going. They were relentless at perfecting every joke and every craft. And that's actually what they do for their Netflix specials and their comedy specials, is they spend the year going to different nightclubs, going to different clubs, and presenting the same joke over again, so that when it's time for their special, they only say the best jokes. So what does this mean for presentations? So many clients tell me all the time, Brandon, I'm so tired of presenting the same thing over and over again. And I always respond with the following question. If you actually want to make a difference in the world, is it going to be easier for you to achieve that if you present 100 different presentations 100 different times, or if you present the same presentation 100 times? If your goal is to be an exceptional speaker, I believe the road to that goal is the same in being an amazing stand-up comic. Your jokes won't land at the beginning. Nobody will like you at the beginning. In some cases, people might even boo you. But if you tell that same joke 100 times, 200 times, or even 1,000 times, that joke will land every single time. If you present 100 times, 200 times, or even 1,000 times, your presentation will be absolutely perfect, so you can inspire anybody who has the opportunity and the fortune of listening to you speak. As the late George Carlin showed us and taught us, life is not measured by the breaths that we take, but rather the moments that take our breath away. If we want to aspire to be entertainers, to be people who have a message to share with millions of amazing individuals around the world, then we need to be relentless in the same way that every single amazing stand-up comic was relentless with their pursuit in making the world a better place. We need to present so many times that it hurts, frankly, and so many times that our message is so secure that the world is waiting for us to share it. As always, if you enjoyed this week's episode of Master Talk, smash that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time. Take care.